for Robbie Lawler versus Colby Covington, UFC on ESPN 5. An entertaining card. A lot of people didn't expect a lot out of this card. Not a lot of big names outside of the main event and co-main event. But it delivered. A lot of great finishes, really dramatic stuff. Holtzman versus Ma, two guys who just walked forward toward each other and threw power punches, and it was Holtzman who was able to swell Ma's eyes so badly that the fight had to be stopped. But a gutsy performance by both guys. Very, very entertaining. I really enjoyed it. Not a lot of defense. I don't see either guy moving up a whole lot because of this fight. Of course, Ma getting more respect. Holtzman got the win, but he's going to have to clean some things up. He's in a division that is just absolutely monstrous. That's my dog Penny behind me. Mir-Shah versus Giles. Once again, a fun fight. I thought Giles had to win this in order to really move forward with his career. Mir-Shah, entertaining. Hadn't fought any big names. Hadn't beaten anyone of note, but an entertaining kind of scrapper. Giles needed to get over him, I think, in a big way to really advance his career and show us he was a great fighter. And that didn't happen. Mir-Shah winning by technical submission, the guillotine choke. I got to talk a little bit about this. Herb Dean getting a lot of criticism for a couple of stoppages. I think it's unjustified. If you look at the Mir-Shah finish, which was the first one that was controversial, Mir-Shah gets the guillotine. Giles taps both legs, the right leg, then the left leg, if I remember correctly, with different hands. The problem is, reaching for the leg is how you would kind of want to circle out and get out of that position too. So Mir-Shah couldn't be aware, because he couldn't see it, that whether he was feeling a tap or whether Giles was just reaching for his leg. He couldn't really tell. So Mir-Shah stopping because of a tap in that position. Number one, he's not supposed to stop until the referee stops him. So even if you feel a tap, the referee doesn't see it. You can let go and the guy keeps going and you can just say he didn't tap. So you wait for the referee, first off. Secondly, a lot of people will anyway. If, especially, when I was fighting and stuff, when I felt a tap, I let go. In jiu-jitsu or in MMA, yeah, you're supposed to wait for the referee. I never did. And there were a couple times the referee didn't see it. I felt the guy tap and I let him go, and the guy was a gentleman, and that was the end of the fight. Could have gone bad for me. The guy could have claimed he didn't tap. Never happened to me. So Mir-Shah certainly absolved for not letting go of the submission simply because he couldn't see the tap and he wasn't sure if the guy was just reaching for his leg or tapping. In the position they were in, it's hard to tell. Herb was on the other side of the action. He was behind him, he was close, he was looking, but he couldn't see the tap from where he was. And if you look at it again, you see Bruce Buffer and everybody behind them saying he tapped, because it was underneath. And Herb was just in the wrong position to see it. So, not necessarily Herb's fault. It wasn't Mir-Shah's fault. It just happened. Important thing to keep in mind is air chokes, blood chokes, period, look gnarly when someone passes out from a choke. It doesn't do anything. Meaning, for a knockout, if someone's blasted and you don't get there in time, Ben Askren, Masvidal, someone can take some extra damage that can break your jaw, can cause a severe concussion, and really mess you up if you're late on a strike stoppage, because the person's going to keep striking. A choke sucks and you pass out, but that extra fire, and remember, a late stoppage is a matter of a few seconds. Another few seconds isn't going to do anything. You have to hold the choke for a long time. For what you've seen in the movies, to kill somebody or to permanently damage them, it takes minutes, and that's not going to happen. So I don't mind, and we're going to talk about the Clay Guida stoppage, a little extra check to make 100% sure. That extra 2 seconds in a choke isn't going to do anything. They're already out. Your brain doesn't go through severe damage for a while. So my point is, a late stoppage on strikes does a lot more damage because you can get hit and then you can take 3 or 4 more. That 3 or 4 can really do damage. A couple extra seconds in a choke, you're already out. It doesn't do anything. You're just out a little bit longer. So I'll talk about the Clay Guida Jim Miller thing in a second. Haqparast versus Silva. Haqparast looked great. It was a great fight. Both guys stepping forward. Both guys had their opportunities. Both guys did damage. They were aggressive. I liked the combination. Haqparast just caught him on the chin and took him out. 36 seconds into round 2. Haqparast, a lot of people with the Kelvin Gastelum comparisons. He fights like Kelvin Gastelum. Stocky, short, solid, really sits over his punches, good base, turns his hips every time he throws, generates a lot of power, a lot of fun. I think this fight really steps him up into, not quite, but taking on some contenders, taking on some former contenders, stuff like that. It really moves him up to that next level. That middle range, what you want to do whenever you're in the middle range is not just win, but show I don't belong here in this middle range. this, the so-so crowd, we're all fighting to see who establishes themselves. I'm better than all these guys. And if you look at guys who make it to the contender status, they blow away guys in the middle range. They can have trouble with contenders, but the middle range, they showed, I don't belong here. I'm better than this. Hapras with this fight might have shown that. Hey, I'm just better than this division. I'm not necessarily a title contender. This division is monstrous. But give me my shot. So his next fight should be a fringe contender, should be a former contender, should be out of that middle range kind of class. I think he made that distinction clear. Jim Miller, Clay Guida. The problem I had with this fight, I thought it might be entertaining. The problem I had with it is there are not a lot of stakes, meaning the winner doesn't really go anywhere, the loser doesn't go anywhere. They're in the same basic place. A win, no matter what happened, wasn't going to vault somebody into contention right now. They've just been through too many fights. They've been through too many wars. They've been in contender status before. We know what we get out of Clay Guida and Jim Miller. Entertaining fight as long as it lasted. Both guys just went for it. Guida clipped Miller. Miller clipped Guida. And then Guida kind of fell into this guillotine choke. And Jim Miller has great jiu-jitsu. So, beautiful choke. Now, once again, a controversial stoppage by Herb Dean. Once again, I think undeserved for kind of a different reason. What people were critical of is he pulls Clay Guida's hand, and then it kind of lets it go, and then he pulls it again, and then he stops the fight. And people went, oh, he's already out. In my experience in jiu-jitsu, having done it 20 years, not everybody, people have this idea that everybody who gets choked out goes limp. They don't. So a lot of times when you choke a guy out and they're out, they tense up. They kind of do this, or their muscles fire. They're out. They're completely out. But their muscles tense. Not everybody, it's not like cutting the strings on a marionette where everybody passes out. When they pass out, they go limp. That doesn't always happen. You see it sometimes when guys go stiff like that. In chokes, sometimes you choke a guy out and it seems like they're still fighting the choke because their muscles are still tensing. It looked like, to me, that's what happened with Clay Guida. He was out, but his arm was still kind of tense. So when Herb Dean pulled it, it was still pulling back enough that he thought maybe he wasn't out. And then he checks again, and it was out because it didn't go back. That's a common misconception among casual fans or fans who haven't done jiu-jitsu, which a lot of them haven't. People don't just go limp when they go out. Sometimes their muscles tense. Sometimes not all of them tense. Sometimes their whole body tenses. So when they go in there and pull, they're like, oh, why, he checked. Why isn't it? Well, his arm is still firing, so he can't tell if he's fighting the choke or if he's out. So he pulls it, and it's still kind of tense, and he pulls it again and decides he's out, and he was, and stops the fight. So once again, an extra couple seconds that doesn't really do anything. He's already out from the choke. But you got to make sure, because people react differently to being choked out. It's the same way some people get knocked out, and they just go limp, and they're out. But some people get knocked out, and they're still stiff, and they're up, and they don't fall down. Joe Warren, Pat Kern, he just didn't fall down. His legs were still firing. He was completely out. Some people move around when they get knocked out. Their legs and arms start moving, so everybody reacts a little differently. Being choked out is the same thing. People react differently to it. So the misconception that everyone who gets choked out suddenly is like a rag doll, that doesn't always happen. So Dean was checking a couple times. Dean's made some mistakes in previous fights that I do not absolve him for. But this card, I feel that both late stoppages were understandable in a sense. Colby Covington, Robbie Lawler. When I broke this down, I thought if Colby Covington gets out of round 2 without Robbie Lawler landing some power shots, without hurting him, without, of course, knocking him out, got a good chance of winning this fight. I really honestly felt that way not even before round 1 ended. I felt, dude, this is Colby Covington's fight. It was just clear Robbie couldn't keep up with the pace, wasn't going to land anything big, and was already getting tired. There were like 20 seconds left in the first round. I went, this is Colby's fight. That breaking point that I thought he would get maybe to round 2, maybe early round 3 before we realized, man, he's really wearing Robbie down. I thought at the end of round 1, we saw a fatigued Robbie Lawler who just couldn't keep up. To me, the script was written right there. It was obvious sitting there. Man, Colby's got him worn out. It's the end of the first round. And after that, it was all Colby Covington. Took him down pretty much at will every time he really committed to it. Later, there were a couple commitments he couldn't get to, but almost every time he went for the takedown, he got it. He landed 500, he threw 500 strikes in a 5-round fight. It reminded me of boxing, for the boxing fans. Paul Williams was an old welterweight, middleweight, who would throw like 150 punches around. Not with any power, behind any particular punch, but just out-volumed guys. Margarito, of course, loaded raps. The guy was a cheater, but he just threw so many punches, fighters just wilted. You couldn't keep up with the guy. It reminded me of that kind of performance, almost, the Diaz brothers. I tweeted out that it was almost a Diaz kind of style. They're stylistically very different, and then how they hold their hands. The Diaz brothers have a really low stance and all these things, but that volume of just pitter-pat, 50, 60% on every punch. Nothing, no one shot really hurts you. It's just death of 1,000 cuts. And that's what it looked like. Colby was just bang, 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 bang. No particular power behind any punch. And wore, also a southpaw, and just wore Robbie out. And the difficulty is, Robbie, whenever he would try to come back and get something going, it was this huge overhand left that Colby Covington could see a mile away, and he would just move his head out of the way and keep going with what he was doing. And Robbie had no answer for it. None at all. And that style is so hard to deal with, man. And I've dealt with it in sparring. Fortunately, I never saw it in an actual fight. And it's just, God damn, what am I going to do here? Because you just boom, boom. No, the shots aren't hurting. It's almost like you can't even move your head out of the way, because you move your head out of one, and there are like three more that come. The only way to do is slip and rip and take advantage of the fact that they're throwing a lot of shots, and they're always kind of a little bit vulnerable. But Robbie didn't have a lot of versatility in any of his strikes. His right hook really wasn't a factor. Didn't work the body that effectively. So all he had was really that overhand left. And the problem with those power shots, when they aren't set up, you aren't using a jab, which is hard, which Robbie's never had a great jab, it's easy to see. I can see an overhand left coming from a mile away, and every time Colby Covington saw it. And he just wore Robbie down with that style. The problem with the Diaz brothers is they're vulnerable to the takedown. That's always been their kryptonite, is that volume style. You're not hitting hard enough to keep a grappler away from you, basically. They're not worried about running into one particular punch. So they'll eat a couple and go in and take you down. That's been the problem with the Diaz brothers their whole career, is they can outstrike just about anybody. But that style, bum, 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 grapplers just go through those light punches and take them down. Colby Covington, All-American at Oregon State, the guy can wrestle. So even that normal counter to that kind of style, which is eat a few punches and take the guy down, you're not going to take Colby Covington down easily. It would take a Ben Askren. Even Kamaru Usman, his takedowns tend to be kind of medium range, double leg stuff. He can't shoot from the outside like Ben Askren does. That's going to be tough. And usually during a fight, especially in a deep division, I can see a fighter and go, okay, good performance, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so give him problems. No matter how good a performance is, I can usually see somebody in the division that goes, okay, I know, I can see who can counter that style. Ferguson over Cowboy Cerrone, great performance. I saw how Khabib's going to give him problems with the takedown, with the way he moves forward and the takedown heavy style of Khabib. I can see how that would give him problems. Not that he doesn't beat him, who knows. But you can see stylistically the combination to the lock. That, okay, this guy might give him a problem. The only fighter I see at 170, and it's packed, the only fighter I see at 170 giving Colby trouble is Kamaru Usman, because he has a similar style. Wrestling heavy, grinding, volume attack. I would say the difference is here, and I'll break this down if it ends up happening, of course. I'll have more details, and I'll get closer to the fight and all these things. My initial impression is Colby Covington has a higher work rate, even than Kamaru Usman, who's a volume guy. But Kamaru Usman tends to hit harder. He does have harder medium range punches. So there's that. A lot of people, of course, controversy about Colby Covington's comments about Matt Hughes at the end. Look, whatever will get the biggest reaction, that's what Colby Covington's going to say. It's not right. It's not true. It's just whatever gets the biggest reaction, whatever gets the biggest heel reaction, whatever gets the most boos, that's what Colby Covington's going to say. End of story. And I'm doing Sirius XM radio for Luke Thomas today, by the way, if you're able to tune in. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot. Is it over the line? What's the line? What line? Will you not watch him? No. You'll might want to see him get his ass kicked. That's great. When we watch a fight, any fight, there's no monitor to our brains telling the promoter, oh, we hate that guy, that's why we're watching. We love that guy, that's why we're watching. They just know we're watching. If you watch, in order to watch Colby Covington get his ass beat, he's winning because you're watching him, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. If you want to see him get killed, Fine, you're still tuning in. You're still buying that pay-per-view. So he's gone full heel. Full heel. How negative can I get? It's not even a shticky kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of heel. It's full heel. So whatever gets him most boos, that's what he's going to say. And if it means trashing a crippled Matt Hughes, and also a lot of people said when I was on Twitter, people were talking about it and said, well, Matt Hughes has domestic violence and stuff. It wasn't in the vein of F that woman beater, blah, blah. It wasn't even like in a good guy kind of role where Matt Hughes is a bad person. It was just something negative to say about Robbie Lawler and his friend. That's it. It wasn't like he was on a crusade against, the things Matt Hughes has done that are terrible. No, it was, poking fun at a guy that got hit by a train is funny. So even when he could have maybe made it a more of a face kind of thing, he didn't. He went full heel. Full heel. That's Colby Covington's thing. So the problem is that, not problem, but the fact is he was just the better fighter against Robbie Lawler. For 5 rounds of a 5-round fight, Colby Covington was a better fighter, and you got to give the devil his due. He looked great. So the next fight has to be Kamaru Usman. And Kamaru, if you think Kamaru trains hard now to get ready for Colby Covington, if you've ever been on a punch counter, which is a little clicker we use to count punches, your thumb's going to wear out. You need that kind of volume to take on Colby Covington. So I think it's going to be an excellent fight. I really do. But there's going to be it's my only worry about it is that it's going to get ugly. The buildup will be like people might not want to see it. That's a little bit what I want about. The political undertones of a black immigrant champion from Nigeria fighting this guy who's riding the Trump train as hard as he possibly can and has no problem saying anything, no matter how offensive it is to so much of the audience. He doesn't care. This might get really super duper ugly. And I don't want to see that, but I have to acknowledge it's almost certainly going to happen. So we'll see as it gets closer what goes on. But it's going to be Colby Covington taking on Kamaru Usman very, very soon as Usman's ready. And there's going to be a lot of heat, positive and negative, behind that fight. So let me know what you guys are looking forward to. All right? But I'll see you before the next fight and after.